We've been in court to try to get information about USAID. Who else has been in court trying to do this? I'm not aware of anyone else. I'm glad that USAID is finally in the sights of government reformers. Now, to be clear, during the first Trump administration, there were attempts to try to rein in USAID that were largely missed, but they did try to hit it. And USAID has been in the sights of anyone who's concerned about government spending for years. And ironically, the left at times doesn't like USAID because it wasn't hardcore enough in terms of advancing its values, and they would support governments that they didn't like, which are fair criticisms. Americans don't want foreign aid. They don't want it. And we're always lectured by the left and the media and, frankly, some Republicans why foreign aid is useful. Americans aren't persuaded. They've made the arguments, and Americans don't want it. And Trump, of course, understands that more directly. My personal view is I like foreign aid that, involves guns and bullets, basically military aid. That's the only type of foreign aid that I support. And even then, it should be loans and leases and things like that so that we're not too far out of pocket, too much out of pocket. I mean, we defend the free world. We're the economic engine of the world. That's all the foreign aid that we have to worry about. A vibrant economy, our values, our culture, in the traditional sense of the word, our constitutional system, that will save the rest of the world. Not spending money on corrupt politicians or foreign policy aid groups or NGOs that basically launder our money to advance their radical extremist agenda. And one of the folks that Judicial Watch is focused on, and Judicial Watch has been investigating USAID, for as long as I can remember. I went and highlighted some of our prior work on our tweet feed, our X feed, I guess I'm supposed to call it. Let's go through these headlines from 2017. U.S. gives Soros groups millions to destabilize Macedonia's conservative government. 2017, we exposed that. 2018, Judicial Watch, new documents show State Department and USAID working with Soros Group to channel money to a mercenary army of far-left activists in Albania. U.S. subsidizes Soros' radical leftist agenda worldwide, new Judicial Watch report shows, and I'll link to all of this below. And so we've got some videos of my talking about these issues. I don't know, 2018? How long ago was that? 7 years ago? 6-7 years ago. Let's run the first video.
Judicial Watch, as I discussed recently, has numerous federal lawsuits trying to figure out the extent of taxpayer support, particularly under the Obama administration, for the Soros Open Society organizations, especially their activities abroad. We've sued the State Department and USAID, which is a funder of supposedly groups that better civil society in other countries. And of course, they're giving money to the Soros operations. We've investigated Albania, Macedonia, Romania, Colombia, and Guatemala. And we filed 4 lawsuits related to State Department funding for Soros's radical agenda. And one of those lawsuits struck pay dirt, which is the lawsuit over its activities in Albania. Albania is controlled by a left-wing communist government. There's really no other way to describe it. So of course the Soros organizations are supportive of this government. And your tax dollars are going to bolster its efforts to consolidate power. Specifically, $9 million in taxpayer money, our documents that we uncovered as a result of the lawsuit show, were sent to Soros by the Obama administration in 2016. Specifically, the USAID funneled money through the agency's Civil Society Project to the foundations, the Soros Foundations groups in Albania. It's called a Justice for All campaign, which was overseen by Soros's East-West Management Institute. So what was going on is the judiciary was a little too independent for the leftists in power, and they wanted to push an effort to, quote, reform the judiciary, meaning bring it back under control of the leftist authoritarians running Albania. So Soros was on the side, unfortunately, of the authoritarians, and our tax dollars were being used to subsidize this effort.
So that's a much younger me, frighteningly younger me, talking about the subsidies for Soros. And here's another clip shortly thereafter further explaining it. As we're worrying about what's going on in the United States, the left, often with your taxpayer resources, is working its will all over the world. We've uncovered how that was going on in Macedonia. You see this issue in Ukraine as well. These Soros groups supposedly are anti-corruption, but they're political players that come down on one side of the political spectrum, it looks like. Yeah, and as I recall, with what Soros was doing with USAID and or the State Department, was that he was collaborating, or his people were collaborating, in helping direct the spending. So there'd be a chunk of change that Soros's people would provide advice on as to who to give money to. So not only were they getting the money, but they were also funneling it to favored groups. And I don't know about you, I don't think George Soros should get a dime of taxpayer money. He doesn't, A, need it. Why is he getting money? Forget about the politics. It's like, I mean, would you want to give Elon Musk millions of dollars in taxpayer money to advance his political ideas in other countries? I don't know, maybe you would. I don't think he needs it, and he'd do it on his own anyway. And then I was on Fox a few years ago with Tucker when he was still on there, talking about this as well. Let's go to Fox.
Tom Fitton is the president of Judicial Watch, and he joins us tonight. One of the reasons I'm so glad that you're here, Tom, is because you kind of tie a bow on stories. The Obama administration's over, but there's a lot that they did that we don't know anything about because the press refused to cover those stories. Tell us this small piece of it. What did they do in Albania and why?
Well, they're supporting the socialist communist government there, the Soros operations, and they're doing it with taxpayer dollars. They were doing it in 2016, and they were even doing it in the first part of the Trump administration in 2017, co-sponsoring surveys of the population that generated 91% of the support in favor of the pro-government, pro-Soros operation that would have restricted the independence of the judiciary. You know, like all strongman governments, they don't like independent judiciaries. Right. So they were trying to reform the judiciary in a way that would have brought it under control of the socialist government there. And what's troubling is that obviously Soros needs no taxpayer money to do any of this advocacy work. But the State Department and USAID is partnering with Soros and basically allowing Soros to set our foreign policy agenda. And then secondly, Soros's operations, according to these documents, were allowed to come into the State Department and provide technical reviews of other applications for other government money in Albania. So there you go. A little bit grayer now, but the issue hasn't changed. And there's still battles in town over funding for, I don't know specifically Soros, right? I haven't checked the numbers recently. But USAID, it's a nightmare when it comes to transparency. Right this second, they are still fighting us about, we sued, and I told you about the lawsuit a few weeks ago. Prior to, I think, most of this coming down, USAID was giving money to Gaza, groups in Gaza, and we wanted the details. I think it was $24 million. Was it $24 million? I think it was $24 million. Let me look at the press release. $27 million. And there were recipients of that money, and they don't want to tell us who the recipients are. How do you like that? Now, they're supposed to get back to us soon about this. It'll be interesting to see if the Trump administration is going to change their transparency views from the Biden people. But you know why they don't want to give us the names of or the entities they were giving money to in Gaza. I guarantee you they're connected to Hamas and terrorism. I guarantee you. And so my point being, Judicial Watch has been second to none in trying to pursue what USAID has been up to, not just like criticizing them because someone started criticizing them here in town finally, which is great. I mean, it's just great. But we've been in court to try to get information about USAID. Who else has been in court trying to do this? I'm not aware of anyone else. Time and time again, going back years, because we've known for years that USAID is a money laundering operation for the radical left, including, it looks like, George Soros. So I'm hoping President Trump is able to shut it down. You know, and as I noted in, and I've been talking about this issue as well on the media. I was on, I was on Newsmax earlier this week talking about how important this issue is.
President of Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton, joining me right now. Tom, it's always a pleasure. You know, it's telling to see how angry these Democrats get when you take away their power to tell the rest of us what to do and how to run our lives, yes?
Well, it's even more direct. You're taking away their money. The left relies on agencies like USAID to launder tax money into their groups, their related groups, that then spend it to advance their agenda abroad. And in certain circumstances, you get government monies going to advance their agenda at home. This is really, I think, a indictment of the Democratic Party and the left, that they're so crazed about the president's desires to curb waste, fraud, and abuse. President Trump, and frankly all members of the executive branch, have a positive constitutional obligation to take reasonable steps to ensure our money isn't being wasted. That has not been done for a generation here in Washington, D.C., and all the screaming and yelling and caterwauling about all this suggests he's on to something.
And I was on OANN, our friends over there, with John Hines, talking about this issue as well.
President Donald Trump recently signed an executive order suspending foreign aid and placing an independent agency known as the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, under the purview of the State Department. In the past, the agency has had close ties with one globalist billionaire, at least, George Soros, and some of his foundations for many decades, according to reports by the Heritage Foundation. With us is Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch. Tom, what do we know of George Soros and his connections with some of these foreign aid disbursements from agencies like USAID?
Well, Judicial Watch uncovered how George Soros linked groups and his Open Society Foundation partnered with USAID, received funding from taxpayers as a result. And I don't know about you, but I don't think George Soros needs the help of the taxpayer to do anything he wants. And what happens is Soros is active in a particular country. USAID comes and partners with him directly or indirectly, and entities he controls or funds. And the advocacy resulting from that is leftism and anti-Americanism, and just pushing the agenda that the left pushes here, they do in other countries with taxpayer support.
So we're getting the message out. It's so important that we get a hold as to what USAID is doing, because it's just the tip of the iceberg. And if we can't collectively, meaning the American people, can't control that, rein in that type of spending so that it's in the least ideologically neutral to the degree it occurs at all, then we're not going to get much else done. And this is why Congress needs to get its act together. They haven't passed the bill to cut $1 in spending. There's been no talk, other than through Trump's leadership, of cutting back government agencies. I mean, the last we heard from Congress on spending was they fully funded the Biden administration's policies several months ago. There's another decision on that coming up in March. Now they're coming up with budget resolutions and such. Now, are they going to curtail government spending in USAID? Are they going to shut it down? Are they going to shut down the education department, as President Trump is calling for? He's trying to curtail it as he's able to do under law. But in the end, it looks like Congress has to literally has to shut it down. Where's the Republican leadership in Congress on not only spending, but ending government agencies that are not advancing the public interest and are arguably outside what the Constitution allows for or what the Republic demands in terms of government here in the United States?
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.